for the first time in 10 years. The only voice in my head was my own. There was no one to second-guess my decisions, no one to subtly belittle my achievements, no one to tell me I was being too sensitive when I objected to being treated poorly. For 6 months after my brutal, soul-crushing divorce, I had been living in a state of quiet, blissful, and hard-won peace. I had my own apartment, a small, light-filled space that I kept meticulously organized, a stark contrast to the emotional chaos of my marriage. I had my own business, a freelance cybersecurity consultancy that was finally taking off, my reputation growing with every firewall I strengthened and every network I secured. I had my freedom, and after a decade of living in a gilded cage with my ex-husband, Derek, freedom tasted intoxicatingly sweet. I thought the war was over. I thought I had won, but I had forgotten a cardinal rule of cybersecurity. The most dangerous threat is often an insider who already knows your vulnerabilities. And Derek knew every single one of mine. He hadn't just been my husband. He had been my personal hacker, systematically trying to breach my confidence and dismantle my sense of self for 10 years. And when he couldn't control me anymore, he decided to try and destroy me. Have you ever been with someone who needs you to be small so they can feel big, who dims your light so they can shine brighter? It's a slow-acting poison. And it took me a decade to realize I was dying from it. If you've ever escaped a relationship like that, hit that subscribe button. Because this is the story of how I used my ex's own tactics against him and burned his world to the ground. Derek and I had met in our mid-20s. He was a charismatic, ambitious salesman, the kind of guy who could sell ice in a blizzard. I was a quiet, nerdy, and deeply passionate IT specialist. Working my way up the corporate ladder, he was attracted to my stability and my intellect, and I was attracted to his charm and his boundless confidence. We seemed like the perfect couple, the flashy salesman and the brilliant tech girl. But the reality of our marriage was very different. Derek was a man who was deeply, pathologically insecure. He was intimidated by my intelligence. He couldn't stand that I worked in a field he didn't understand. My expertise was a threat to his ego. All that computer mumbo-jumbo, he'd say with a dismissive wave of his hand when I tried to talk about my day. It's not a real business, Cassie, it's a hobby. He would belittle my achievements in 1,000 subtle ways. When I was promoted to head of my department, he threw me a party, but gave a toast that was all about how he had supported me, how he had given me the confidence to succeed. When I started my own consultancy and landed my first major client, he told our friends that he had helped me with the business plan, a complete and utter lie. He was constantly trying to reframe my success as an extension of his own, a product of his support. He was a master of gaslighting. We would have arguments where he would twist my words so expertly that by the end, I would be the one apologizing to him. He would say something cruel, and when I would get upset, he would look at me with his big, sad, puppy dog eyes and say, "Babe, it was a joke. Why do you always have to be so sensitive? I feel like I have to walk on eggshells around you." And I would end up comforting him, my own valid feelings dismissed as an overreaction. The breaking point came when my business truly started to take off. I was earning more than he was. I was getting media attention in trade publications, and I was being asked to speak at conferences. He couldn't stand it. My success was a glaring spotlight on his own insecurities, and he became unbearable. He grew cold, distant, and increasingly critical. The divorce was his last battle to maintain control. He fought me on everything. He tried to claim half of my business, a business I had started with my own money long after we were married. He tried to argue for alimony. He dragged the process out for over a year, not because he wanted the money, but because he wanted to punish me for leaving him, for daring to be more successful than he was. In the end, with the help of a brilliant lawyer, I won. The court saw his claims for what they were, a vindictive sham. I kept my business. I kept my savings. I walked away with my freedom. And he, I think, never forgave me for it. He had lost his last measure of control over me, and for a man like Derek, that was an unforgivable sin. For 6 months, there was peace, a blessed, beautiful silence. He didn't contact me. I didn't contact him. I was rebuilding. I was healing. I was happy. I truly, naively, believed the worst was over. The first hint that a new kind of storm was brewing came as a single, cryptic text message from an old college friend I hadn't spoken to in months. College friend, hey Cass, just saw something online. You okay? Thinking of you. I stared at the message, confused. Saw what online I texted her back. Hey, I'm great. What did you see? She never replied. I brushed it off as a weird, random text. But then, 2 days later, another one came. This time from a former colleague. Former colleague Cassie. I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm on your side. Don't let the bastards get you down. A cold knot of dread began to form in my stomach. What were they talking about? What was happening? My first thought was that Derek was spreading rumors about me, bad-mouthing me to our old mutual friends. It was his style, petty and vindictive. I spent the next hour frantically searching for my own name online. I checked Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I Googled myself. Nothing. There were no new posts, no tagged photos, no articles, just my own professional website and my clean, curated social media presence. It made no sense. The anxiety was a low, constant hum under my skin for the rest of the week. I felt a sense of impending doom I couldn't explain. I felt like people were whispering about me, looking at me with pity. The final, devastating clue came from my best friend, Jenna. She was my rock. The one person who had seen the real Derek from the beginning and had supported me through every second of the ugly divorce. She called me on a Friday night, her voice strange and tight. Hey, Cass, she said, just checking in. How are you doing? I'm fine, I said. Though it was a lie, actually. No, I'm not, Jenna. Something weird is going on. I keep getting these strange, cryptic messages from people, like they know something about me that I don't. It's freaking me out. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. A silence so full of dread, it felt like a physical weight. Jenna, I said. My heart starting to pound. What is it? What do you know? Oh, Cassie, she whispered. And her voice was full of a pain that terrified me. I didn't know how to tell you. I was hoping you wouldn't find out. Find out what I demanded, my voice rising with panic. Jenna, you have to tell me. What is going on? I can't, she said, her voice breaking. Not over the phone. I'm coming over. Are you home? Yes, I'm home, I said, my mind racing. What is it? Just tell me. I can't, she repeated. And I could hear her start to cry. Cassie, you need to sit down, and you need to be with a friend when you see this. I'm getting in a cab right now, and I'm bringing a bottle of whiskey, the good stuff. She hung up. I stood in the middle of my quiet, peaceful living room, my phone in my hand, my entire body trembling. I didn't know what was coming, but I knew, with a certainty that was as cold and as sharp as ice, that it was going to be bad. The peace I had worked so hard to build was a fragile thing, a house of cards, and the man I had escaped, the ghost in my machine, had just unleashed a hurricane with the power to blow it all away. I just had no idea how personal, how violating, and how utterly devastating the storm was going to be. The 20 minutes it took for Jenna to get to my apartment were the longest of my life. I paced my small, quiet living room, my heart a frantic prisoner in my chest, beating against my ribs, demanding to know what was wrong. My mind was a whirlwind of terrible possibilities. Had Derek been in an accident? Had he been arrested? Had he said something terrible to my parents? I spun a dozen different nightmare scenarios, but none of them, not one, came close to the sickening reality of what she was about to show me. When the doorbell finally rang, I wrenched the door open. Jenna stood there, her face pale, her eyes full of a pained, furious sympathy, and in her hand was a brown paper bag from the liquor store. From it, the neck of a bottle of very expensive, single malt scotch was peeking out. She had brought the good stuff, the emergency stuff. Oh, Cassie, was all she said, her voice a broken whisper. She walked past me into the apartment, put the bag on the kitchen counter, and then turned to face me. She took me by the shoulders. Are you sure you want to see this? She asked, her eyes searching mine. We can call a lawyer. We don't have to look at it. I have to know, Jenna, I said, my voice trembling. I have to know what he's done, what everyone is whispering about. She nodded slowly, her jaw tight. Okay, she said, but we're doing this together, and you are not allowed to believe for one single second that any of this is your fault. Do you understand me? This is not a reflection on you. This is a reflection of the monster he is. I just nodded, unable to speak. She didn't use her phone. She took out her laptop, a small, professional-looking silver one. She sat on my sofa and opened it, her movements slow and deliberate, as if she were handling explosive material. I sat beside her, my body rigid with dread. She typed a URL into the browser, her fingers hesitating for a moment before she hit enter. She took a deep breath, and then she turned the screen towards me. The web page that loaded was designed with a clean, minimalist, and utterly malicious aesthetic. The background was a stark, clinical white at the top. In a simple, elegant, sans serif font was a title that made the air leave my lungs. The Real Cassie Vance, my name, my full name, and below it was a gallery of shame, a grid of video thumbnails, dozens of them, each one a stolen moment from my life, from my marriage. Each one was a tiny, pixelated window into a private world that was now on public display. I didn't recognize the moments at first. They were just blurry images. But then my brain, against my will, began to focus. There was a thumbnail of me and Derek on our honeymoon in Italy, laughing on the balcony of our hotel room. The morning sun on our faces. I was in my bathrobe. I remembered that moment. He had just told a stupid joke. It had been a moment of pure, unguarded happiness. There was another one, a still from a video of us decorating our first Christmas tree together. I was on his shoulders, reaching to put the star on top, my face full of laughter. And then there were others, more private, much more private. Moments from our bedroom, moments from our life together that were never, ever meant for anyone's eyes but our own. Moments of trust, moments of intimacy, moments of love. Each thumbnail was a separate, profound violation. He had taken our shared history, our love story, and he had dismembered it, cutting it up into small, ugly pieces to be consumed by strangers. My hand flew to my mouth, a sob catching in my throat. "Oh God," I whispered. "Don't read the captions, Cass," Jenna said, her voice a low, urgent warning. But it was too late. My eyes were already there, drawn by a morbid, horrified magnetism. Beneath each video, Derek had written a caption. They were cruel, they were shaming, and they were full of lies. Under the honeymoon video, he had written day 3 of the honeymoon. Already regretting my decision, she never stops performing. Under the Christmas tree video, she always had to be the center of attention, even on Christmas. Under the more intimate videos, the captions were even more vicious, more humiliating. He twisted our private moments into a sick, public narrative of his own creation, painting me as unstable, as promiscuous, as a crazy woman he had been a victim of. He hadn't just posted the videos. He had curated them. He had weaponized them. This wasn't just a moment of angry, impulsive revenge. This was a calculated, strategic campaign of character assassination. He wanted to ruin my reputation. He wanted to shame me into silence. He wanted to ensure that any time someone Googled my name for a potential job, for a potential date, this would be what they found. My name, forever tied to this digital sewer he had created. I felt a wave of nausea so powerful I had to double over. The room was spinning. I couldn't breathe. It was a violation so deep, so absolute. There are no words for it in the English language. He had taken my body, my memories, my trust, and he had posted them online for the world to see, to judge, to consume. It was a digital flaying, a soul-level assault. I was having a full-blown panic attack. My heart was a wild, terrified bird, beating itself to death against the cage of my ribs. Jenna's arms were around me, her voice a steady presence in the roaring chaos of my head. "Breathe, Cassie," she was saying. Over and over again. "Just breathe with me, in and out. He's a monster. This is not you. This is him. This is a reflection of his own ugliness, not yours. Breathe." I don't know how long we sat there like that, me hyperventilating, her holding me together with the sheer force of her will. Eventually, the roaring in my ears subsided, and the shaking in my limbs lessened. The first wave of pure, animal terror passed, leaving behind a vast, cold, and silent ocean of shame. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to crawl into a hole and pull the world in after me. I thought about changing my name, moving to a different country, erasing my own existence so that this digital ghost he had created would be all that was left. He had almost won. He had almost broken me. We sat in silence for a long time. Jenna had gone to the kitchen and poured 2 very, very large glasses of the whiskey. She put one in my trembling hands. "Drink this," she said. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a command. I took a sip. The scotch burned a fiery path down my throat. A welcome, grounding pain in the middle of my emotional numbness. Why, I whispered, the word a small, broken thing. Why would he do this? Because he's a coward and a bully, Jenna said, her voice a low, furious growl. And because he lost? You beat him in the divorce. You walked away with your business and your life intact. He couldn't control you anymore, so he did the one thing he had left. He tried to control how the world sees you. He tried to shame you back into a cage. Her words were a life raft in the middle of my ocean of shame. She was right. This wasn't about sex. This was about power. This was his final, desperate, and most vicious attempt to control me. And as the warmth of the whiskey spread through my chest, something else began to stir in the cold, dead ashes of my heart. It was a tiny, flickering ember, and it was anger. A pure, cold, and clarifying rage. How dare he? How dare he take our life, our intimate moments, the trust I had given him, and twist it into this public spectacle of hate? How dare he try to define me, to brand me with his own pathetic, insecure narrative? A new thought, a different kind of thought, began to cut through the fog of my pain. It was the analytical part of my brain, the cybersecurity expert, slowly, shakily, getting back to its feet. I looked at the laptop screen, which Jenna had mercifully angled away from me. My mind started to work, not as a victim, but as a consultant. What site is this, I thought. It wasn't one of the major platforms. It was a smaller, more obscure video hosting site, the kind with lax content moderation policies. What's the hosting service? Who is their domain registrar? What's their server architecture? My brain, my greatest asset, the very thing he had always tried to belittle, began to whir to life. He had used my world, the digital world, to attack me. He had used the language of websites and URLs and online platforms to try and destroy me. He thought he was a master of manipulation, but he was just a salesman, a charming amateur. I, on the other hand, was an expert. I didn't just use the internet. I understood its bones, its plumbing, its secret, hidden pathways. "Jenna," I said, and my voice was different now. The weak, broken whisper was gone. It was replaced by a new tone, a quiet, cold, and very, very dangerous resolve. She looked at me, surprised by the change. "What is it?" I pointed at the laptop. "I need to see it again." "Cassie, no," she started. "You don't need to put yourself through that." "Not the videos," I said, "the website. I need to look at the source code." She stared at me, then a slow, fierce smile spread across her face. She was seeing the same thing I was feeling. The victim was gone. "Oh," she said, her voice full of a dark, beautiful glee. "Oh, you are going to burn him to the ground, aren't you?" I took the laptop from her. I didn't look at the thumbnails. I right-clicked on the page and selected View Page Source. A wall of HTML and JavaScript filled the screen. It was a language I understood better than I understood my own heart. He thought he had posted my shame online for the world to see. He was wrong. What he had actually posted was a declaration of war, and he had sent it to the one person in the entire world he never, ever should have messed with. He knew my vulnerabilities, but I was about to find his, and I was going to tear them wide open. The morning after felt like waking up with a hangover of the soul. My apartment was quiet, but my mind was a screaming chaos of shame, violation, and a white-hot rage that was so intense it felt like a fever. Jenna had stayed the night, a silent, loyal guardian on my sofa, and her presence was the only thing that kept me from feeling like I might just dissolve into thin air. But I knew I couldn't stay in that state of paralyzed horror. Derek had thrown the first punch, a devastating, public, and illegal one. Hiding, disappearing, letting the shame consume me. That was exactly what he wanted. That would be his final victory, and I would not give it to him. My rage, I decided, needed a purpose. It needed a direction. It needed a lawyer. While Jenna made us coffee, her movements a quiet, comforting ritual in the wreckage of my life, I was on my laptop. I wasn't looking at the horrible website. I never wanted to see it again. I was researching. My fingers flew across the keyboard, my old professional self taking over. I searched for the best cybercrime and online harassment lawyers in the city. I wasn't looking for a family lawyer who handled divorces. I was looking for a warrior. I found her. Her name was Evelyn Sterling, a woman with a reputation for being a brilliant, relentless, and terrifyingly effective litigator who specialized in digital age abuse. Her website's tagline was simple and promised everything I needed. We untangle the web. I called her office at 9 a.m. on the dot. I explained the situation to her paralegal in a calm, flat, clinical voice, as if I were describing a network breach for a client. The sheer, cold professionalism in my tone must have gotten their attention. Because Miss Sterling herself was on the phone with me within 10 minutes, I had an appointment for that afternoon. Jenna came with me. She sat beside me in the sleek, modern conference room of Ms. Reroute, Sterling's law firm, a silent, supportive presence. Mrs. Sterling was a woman in her 40s with sharp, intelligent eyes and a demeanor that radiated a calm, controlled ferocity. I told her the story, from the abusive marriage to the messy divorce to the cryptic texts and the final, horrifying discovery. I didn't cry. I presented the facts. When I was finished, she was silent for a moment. Her fingers steepled. She didn't offer me pity. She offered me a strategy. What he has done, Miss Evans, she said, her voice as sharp and as clear as glass, is a textbook example of unlawful dissemination of an intimate image. It is a crime. It is also a clear case of intentional infliction of emotional distress, harassment, and libel. We have him, legally, from about 6 different angles. A small, heavy weight I didn't even know I was carrying lifted from my chest. I wasn't just a victim. I was a plaintiff. Our first step, she continued, already a general planning a war, is to build a legal wall. We will send a formal cease and desist letter to Mr. Hayes at his office via courier, demanding the immediate removal of the content. Simultaneously, we will send a takedown notice to the website's hosting company under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, as you are the copyright holder of your own image. She was magnificent. She was turning my shame into a legal strategy. Now, she said, her expression turning grim, I need to be honest with you. This can be a slow, frustrating process. The website appears to be hosted in a country with very lax privacy laws. They are known for being uncooperative, and your ex-husband, from what you've told me, is an arrogant narcissist who will likely ignore our letter, believing himself to be untouchable. He is, I confirmed, my voice flat. Good, she said, a small, dangerous smile on her face. Arrogant men make mistakes. We will pursue the legal channels with full force. We will file a lawsuit. We will bury him in motions. But you are right to assume it will be slow. The wheels of justice grind slowly. I understand, I said. In the meantime, she said, her sharp eyes meeting mine. You are a cybersecurity expert, is that correct? Yes, I said. Then you know, she said, a new, deeper understanding passing between us, that sometimes the front door is not the only way into a building. I walked out of that law office feeling like a different person. I was still hurt, still violated. But I was no longer a helpless victim. I had a plan, a 2-pronged attack. Ms. Sterling would build the slow, strong, righteous legal wall. And I was going to find the digital backdoor. The cease and desist letter was delivered to Derek's office the next day, as Ms. Sterling had predicted. He ignored it. The takedown notice sent to the hosting company in Iceland was met with an automated reply, stating that they would review the complaint within 30 to 60 business days. Every day that the website stayed online felt like a fresh violation, a new layer of public shame, my friends would call, their voices full of worried sympathy. I stopped answering my phone. I felt like a pariah. The frustration and impotence were eating me alive. The legal wall was being built, but it was being built brick by slow, agonizing brick, and I was still trapped on the wrong side of it. So, I turned to the only thing I could control, my own skills. My apartment, the one he had tried to reduce to an empty shell, became my new war room. I set up my most powerful machine. I installed a series of VPNs that would bounce my signal around the world, making my digital footprint untraceable. I put on a pot of strong, black coffee, and I went to work. My target was Derek's company, Innovate, the company whose success was built on a foundation of lies and a narrative of his own false resilience. Its public face was its website, https www.google.com/search innovatesolutions.com. I started with simple reconnaissance. I spent hours analyzing the site's architecture, its source code, its network infrastructure. I identified the technologies it was built on, the content management system, the third-party plugins. I was casing the joint, learning the layout of his digital house, and as I dug deeper, memories of my marriage began to surface, not as sources of pain, but as valuable pieces of intelligence. I remembered a weekend, years ago, when his first attempt at a company website had crashed. He had been in a panic. He was cheap and had refused to pay for a professional IT consultant. So I, his ever-supportive partner, had spent 48 straight hours rebuilding his server configuration from scratch. I had set up his content management system. I had established his initial administrator accounts, and I remembered a specific conversation. "Okay, Derek," I had said, my eyes burning from staring at a screen for 2 days straight. "I've set up the primary admin account for you. The password, for now, is a default. Innovate23, site. It's just a placeholder. You need to log in and change it to something secure immediately. This is a massive security risk." Yeah, I'll get to it," he had said dismissively, already more interested in the new, flashy design than the boring, back-end security. A cold, hopeful thought began to form in my mind. There's no way, I thought. There's no way he would be that arrogant, that lazy. But I knew my ex-husband. He was a man who cared only about appearances. The flashy exterior, the user interface, the boring, invisible stuff. Like changing a default password on a back-end portal he never looked at. That was exactly the kind of thing he would forget to do. I opened a secure, anonymous browser window. I found the admin login page for his website's CMS, a page not visible to the public. The username, I remembered, was simply admin. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. My heart was pounding. This was a long shot, a stupidly simple one, but sometimes the most complex systems have the simplest, most human flaws. I typed in the password, Innovate123, and I hit enter. For a moment, nothing happened, and then the screen flickered, and a new page loaded. It was a page I knew all too well. "Welcome, Admin, Innovate Solutions Content Management System, Dashboard." A single, beautiful, and utterly damning phrase. Access granted. A laugh escaped my lips, a short, sharp bark of pure, incredulous joy. He had done it. The arrogant, lazy fool had never changed the default password. He had left the front door of his entire digital kingdom wide open. With the key sitting right under the mat, I was inside. I had complete, total, and unrestricted administrative access to his entire company website. I could change the text. I could delete pages. I could upload new photos. I could, if I wanted to, replace every mention of his company's name with the words, "Derek is a pathetic loser." But that was too simple, too chaotic. That was his style, not mine. I was a professional. My revenge would not be simple vandalism. It would be an act of elegant, precise, and devastating engineering. I had found the back door, and now I was going to rig it with a bomb. I opened a text editor, and with a feeling of cold, righteous, and absolute power, I began to write the simple, beautiful, and terrible piece of code that would reroute his entire corporate identity to the sewer where he had tried to dump my life. The art of the redirect was about to begin, and I was going to create a masterpiece. To be inside your enemy's fortress is a heady, intoxicating feeling. For the first hour after I gained access to Derek's website, I did nothing but explore. I was a ghost in his machine, a silent tourist in his digital kingdom, with my admin credentials. Every door was open to me. I moved through his company's files with the quiet confidence of a master key holder. It was all there. His customer databases, his sales projections, his internal marketing strategies, his private employee records. I saw the financials for his new startup, the one funded with my stolen life. The sheer, naked arrogance of his ambition was laid bare before me. I had the power to do anything. I could have deleted his entire customer database with a single keystroke. I could have replaced his corporate logo with a picture of a dumpster fire. I could have rewritten his About Us page to be a detailed, point-by-point confession of his crimes against me. The temptation was there. The thought of such crude, chaotic vandalism was sweet. But that was his style, not mine. My revenge would not be a messy, emotional outburst. It would be a quiet, elegant, and perfectly engineered act of demolition. I wasn't here to throw a digital brick through his window. I was here to rewire the entire building and rig it to explode. My plan was simple, and in the world of cybersecurity, it was a classic. It was called a 301 redirect. It's a simple line of code, a basic command that tells a web browser, the page you are looking for has been permanently moved. Please go to this new address instead. It's a common tool used when a company changes its name or updates its website. It's a piece of digital plumbing, designed to be seamless and invisible to the end user. But in my hands, it would not be plumbing, it would be a weapon. My plan was this: I would write a small script, a logic bomb, and when it was triggered, anyone, anywhere in the world, who tried to visit Derek's shiny corporate homepage, https://www.google.com search QCOS innovatesolutions.com would be instantly, seamlessly, and irrevocably redirected to the disgusting website where he had posted my private videos. His homepage would become my shame page. His brand would become my violation. He had used a website to try and ruin my life. I would return the favor. The beauty of the plan was in its poetic justice. The more he promoted his own company, the more he would be promoting his own monstrous act. Every dollar he spent on advertising, every marketing email he sent, every social media post urging people to visit https://www.google.com search innovatesolutions.com would become an advertisement for his own depravity. He would become the architect of his own public execution. I spent the next 2 days writing the code. It wasn't complex, but I crafted it with the care of a watchmaker. The script had to be small, elegant, and almost invisible, designed to be hidden in the deep, dusty corners of his website's code. I obfuscated it, wrapping it in layers of harmless-looking data, making it look like a piece of old, forgotten analytics script from years ago. If another developer happened to stumble upon it, they would see nothing but a meaningless relic. But the most important part was the trigger. I couldn't just launch the redirect now. That would be too soon. The impact would be limited. No, for this to work, for this to be the career-ending, life-destroying event I wanted it to be, the timing had to be perfect. I needed to detonate this bomb at the moment of his greatest triumph. And to find that moment, I needed more intelligence. Because I had full administrative access, I could see everything, including the company's shared internal calendar. I spent hours scrolling through it, looking at their project timelines, their marketing schedules, their all-hands meetings. And then I found it, the date that made my heart beat faster. In 3 weeks, on a Tuesday, at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, Innovate Solutions was scheduled to have its biggest day ever. It was the official online launch of their flagship product, Innovate 2.0. It was a massive event. I could see the planning documents. They had spent a fortune on it. They had hired a major PR firm. They had bought banner ads on every major tech website. They had paid a dozen tech influencers to promote the launch to their millions of followers. For a 24-hour period, they were doing a full-court press, a media blitz designed to drive hundreds of thousands of potential customers, investors, and journalists to their homepage at the exact moment of the launch. Derek himself was scheduled to host a live-streamed keynote address from their new, fancy office. The office furnished with my stolen life. It was to be his coronation as the tech world's newest star, his moment of ultimate, public victory. It was perfect. I had my target, I had my date, and I had my weapon. The night I planted the code was the most nerve-wracking night of my life. I waited until 3 a.m., the time when web traffic is at its lowest, the time when system administrators are asleep. I routed my connection through a chain of encrypted VPN servers that bounced my signal from Tokyo to Stockholm to Brazil, making my digital presence an untraceable ghost. With my heart pounding, I logged into his system one last time. I didn't place my script anywhere obvious. I navigated deep into the server's file structure, into the forgotten catacombs of the website. I found a dusty, deprecated CSS file from an old version of the site, a file that hadn't been accessed or modified in over 3 years. No one would ever think to look there. I opened the file. It was thousands of lines of old, obsolete code. I scrolled to the very bottom, and with a hand that was surprisingly steady, I copied and pasted my small, elegant, and terrible script into the file. It was a simple conditional statement, a piece of karmic logic. If current date and time is equal to or greater than Tuesday 10:00 a.m. PST, then issue a permanent 301 redirect for the domain https www.google.com search queue up innovate solutions.com to the new URL, the address of the shame site. It was a digital time bomb, set to detonate in exactly 3 weeks. I saved the file. The script was now live, but dormant, a sleeping viper hidden in a pile of dead leaves. My final act was to cover my tracks. I accessed the server's system logs. I found the record of my own admin login, and with a few quiet keystrokes, I erased it from existence. As far as the system was concerned, I had never been there. It was a perfect, clean infiltration. I logged out. I leaned back in my chair, my body trembling with the leftover adrenaline. The deed was done. The bomb was planted. The timer was set. He had built a digital monument to his own ego. He had used the internet, my world, to try and shame me into silence. But he had forgotten who he was dealing with. He had forgotten that I was the one who had helped him lay the foundations of his digital kingdom all those years ago. And I was the one who knew about the loose, crumbling brick in the basement. For the next 3 weeks, I waited. The legal battle continued its slow, grinding pace. Miss Barr, Sterling filed lawsuits. Derek's lawyers sent back arrogant, dismissive replies. The disgusting website remained online. But I was calm. I was patient. Because I knew something they didn't. I knew that the real justice wasn't going to come from a judge in a courtroom months from now. It was going to come from a single line of code, hidden deep in the machine. The countdown had begun, and I was the only one who could hear the clock ticking. The 3 weeks of waiting for my logic bomb to detonate were the calmest and most focused of my life. The legal battle with Derek continued its slow, tedious crawl through the proper channels. His lawyers sent letters full of bluster and denial. My lawyer, Ms. Sterling, sent back cool, factual responses. The vile website he had created remained online, a constant, ugly monument to his crime. But it no longer had the same power over me. The shame and the horror had been replaced by the cold, patient resolve of a sniper who has her target in her sights and is just waiting for the perfect moment to pull the trigger. I spent those 3 weeks preparing for that moment. I unsubscribed from the tech blogs that had been praising him. I muted his name and his company's name on social media. I didn't want to see his smug face or read about his impending triumph. My work was done. All I had to do was wait for his own arrogance to walk him into my crosshairs. The morning of the Innovate 2.0 launch, I woke up feeling a profound sense of peace. It was the day of my digital revenge, the day I would reclaim my own story. I didn't feel anxious. I didn't feel nervous. I felt serene. I made myself a pot of coffee. I put on my favorite playlist, and I set up my command center in my living room. It was a simple setup, but it was all I needed. My powerful main laptop was open to the live stream of Derek's keynote address, which was set to begin at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. My second monitor was open to a social media monitoring tool, tracking any mention of his company or his name. And my tablet, on a stand beside me, was open to a single, blank browser window, the cursor blinking patiently in the address bar, waiting for the URL https www.google.com search innovate solutions.com. My best friend, Jenna, arrived at 9 o'clock, carrying a bag of bagels and a bottle of very expensive champagne, which she placed ceremoniously in my refrigerator. Is today the day, she asked, her eyes gleaming with a kind of righteous, vicarious glee. Today is the day, I confirmed, my voice calm. Are you ready? I looked at my setup, at the quiet order of my apartment, at the determined woman I now saw in the reflection of the dark screen. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. We sat on the sofa, eating bagels, as the countdown timer on the live stream ticked down at 9:30 a.m. sharp. The screen came to life, and there he was, my ex-husband, the monster who had tried to break me. He walked onto the stage of his sleek, new office auditorium to the sound of thunderous applause from his employees. He was wearing an expensive, tailored suit and a smug, confident smile. He looked like the king of the world. He was at the absolute peak of his success, at the precipice of his greatest professional triumph, and he had no idea he was standing on a trapdoor. He began his speech. It was a masterpiece of corporate nonsense and self-aggrandizement. He talked about synergy and disruption and paradigm shifts. He talked about his vision, his passion, his unwavering commitment to integrity. I listened to him speak about integrity, and I felt a laugh bubble up in my chest. This man, who had stolen my most private moments and published them online to shame me, was lecturing the world about integrity. The hypocrisy was so profound it was almost sublime. Jenna must have felt it too. She just looked at me, shook her head, and whispered, "What a clown." He continued his speech, building to the big reveal of his new software. The PR campaign had been a massive success. I could see on my other monitor that the hashtag #JotYourInnovate launch was already beginning to trend. Thousands of people, journalists, investors, potential customers, competitors were tuned in, waiting for him to direct them to his company's homepage at the stroke of 10 o'clock. He was a master showman. I had to give him that. He was building the tension perfectly. In just a few moments, he said, his voice booming with fake excitement, we will be pushing our new platform live, and I invite all of you, right now, to open a new browser window. Get ready, because at 10 o'clock sharp, https://www.google.com or search humiliate will become the new face of the future. I looked at the clock on my screen. 9:59 a.m. My heart began to pound, a slow, heavy drum against my ribs. My hands, which had been so steady all morning, began to feel cold. This was it, the moment of truth, the culmination of weeks of secret, furious work. Jenna reached out and put her hand on my arm. You got this, she whispered. I watched the seconds tick down. 10, 9, 8. On stage, Derek was beaming, his arms spread wide, ready to receive the applause of the world. 7, 6, and 5. I placed my finger on the refresh button of the browser on my tablet. 4, 3, 2. He opened his mouth to shout, Welcome to the future. 1. I hit refresh. For a split second, the screen was white, and then the new page loaded, instantly, seamlessly. It wasn't his sleek, corporate website. It was the ugly, vile, revenge porn site he had built to humiliate me. The title, The Real Cassie Vance, was in stark, bold letters at the top of the screen. My face, my body, my private life, was now the official homepage of Innovate Solutions. The script had worked. The bomb had detonated. Oh my God, Jenna breathed beside me. You did it. I didn't say anything. I turned my attention to the other screen, the one monitoring social media, for the first 30 seconds. There was just the excited chatter of the launch. Then, the first confused tweet appeared. Is anyone else seeing this? I think Innovate's website has been hacked. Then another, trying to check out the new Innovate launch, but their homepage just sent me to a really, really messed up site. WTF. And then, the floodgates opened. The confusion turned to shock, and the shock turned into a massive, viral firestorm. Holy crap. Don't go to the Innovate Solutions website. CEO Derek Hayes apparently posted revenge porn of his ex-wife, and the site is redirecting there. Wait, isn't Cassie Vance the cybersecurity expert? This is insane. Did she do this? She is my new hero. The Kakao Innovate launch is now trending for all the wrong reasons. This is a corporate implosion in real time. The hashtag Derek Hayes is over party began to trend worldwide in under 5 minutes. It was a digital wildfire, spreading faster than I could have ever imagined. Thousands, then tens of thousands, of people were all witnessing his crime, his depravity, at the exact moment he was trying to cement his legacy as a tech visionary. I turned my attention back to the live stream. Derek was still on stage, but his triumphant smile had been replaced by a look of confusion. He could see the faces in his own audience, the way they were all looking down at their phones, their expressions turning from excitement to horror. He could hear the murmurs, the gasps. He knew something was wrong, but he didn't know what yet. And then I saw it, a young woman in a headset, one of his employees, ran onto the stage, her face pale with terror. She rushed to his side and whispered frantically in his ear, and I watched, live in high definition, as my ex-husband's world ended. I wish I had a recording of his face in that moment. I would watch it every year on my birthday. The color drained from his face. His confident posture collapsed. His mouth fell open, and a small, strangled sound escaped his lips. His eyes, which had been so full of arrogant fire just moments before, were now wide with a dawning, spectacular, and deeply satisfying terror. He knew that his greatest secret, his ugliest crime, was now the public face of his life's work. He stumbled back from the podium. He looked out at the sea of horrified faces and glowing phone screens. He tried to speak, but only a pathetic, gurgling sound came out. And then, the live stream feed abruptly cut to black. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I disagree. I think it's a dish best served live. To an audience of thousands of your ex-husband's potential customers and investors, with a trending hashtag on the side. And let me tell you, it was delicious. Jenna popped the cork on the champagne. The sound was like a gunshot in my quiet apartment. She poured 2 glasses, her hands shaking with laughter and adrenaline. She handed me a glass. To Cassie Vance, she said, her voice full of awe and pride. The woman who didn't just get revenge, she wrote the code for it. We clinked our glasses together. I took a sip of the cold, bubbly champagne. My name was cleared, my story was out there, but now, it was framed not as my shame, but as his crime. He had tried to use the internet to make me a victim. Instead, I had used it to make him a meme. His biggest professional moment had become his most public humiliation. His company was a smoking ruin. His reputation was incinerated. And I was just getting started. The silence in my apartment after Derek's live stream cut to black was absolute. For a moment, the only sound was the fizzing of the champagne in my glass. Then Jenna let out a low whistle. Well, she said, a slow, wolfish grin spreading across her face. I don't think that product launch could have gone any better. We didn't have to wait long for the fallout. It wasn't a wave, it was a tsunami. The internet. A tool Derek had tried to use to shame me into a quiet, digital prison, had instead become a global courtroom. And the verdict on him was instantaneous, unanimous, and brutal. By that evening, InnovateGate was the #1 trending topic worldwide. Every major news outlet had picked up the story. They ran our pictures side by side, my professional, competent headshot next to his smug, now infamous one. They told the story of our divorce, of his new company, of my accident, and of his abandonment. And now, they had the final, spectacular piece of the puzzle, his vicious, public act of revenge, and my even more public, even more spectacular counterattack. He had tried to make me a villain instead. I had become a folk hero. The comments, the messages, the articles, they weren't about my shame. They were about my strength. I was the cyber vigilante, the queen of code, the woman who had taken her ex-husband's digital poison and injected it directly back into his own heart. Derek's downfall was swift and beautiful in its corporate efficiency. The next morning, Innovate Solutions Board of Directors held an emergency meeting. Their stock, which had been set to soar after the launch, had plummeted in after-hours trading. Their investors were in open revolt. Their brand, which had been built on a flimsy foundation of buzzwords and Derek's charisma, was now inextricably linked to a revenge porn scandal. By noon, they had issued a press release. Derek Hayes had been terminated as CEO, effective immediately, for gross personal and professional misconduct. The company itself, now a toxic asset, filed for bankruptcy 2 weeks later. His dream, the one he had funded with the sale of my stolen memories, had imploded. The legal wall that Mrs. Sterling had been so patiently building suddenly became a battering ram. The hosting company in Iceland, now under intense international media scrutiny and facing a potential boycott, suddenly became incredibly cooperative. The disgusting website was taken down within 24 hours, and the district attorney's office, which had been slowly working on my case, was now flooded with public pressure to act. The evidence was all there, now amplified by a global news cycle. 2 weeks after his disastrous product launch, Derek Hayes was arrested and formally charged with multiple felony counts of unlawful dissemination of intimate images. He had tried to make me a pariah instead. He had become one himself. I, on the other hand, was suddenly in demand. The story had not just cleared my name, it had made it. My little one-woman cybersecurity consultancy was flooded with inquiries. Corporations who had once seen me as a small-fry freelancer now saw me as a brilliant, if unorthodox, digital strategist. They wanted to hire the woman who had so elegantly, so publicly, dismantled her enemy's entire digital presence with a single, perfectly timed script. My business boomed. I had to hire a staff. I moved into a larger office. My success, the very thing his insecurity could not tolerate, became bigger and brighter than I had ever imagined. His attempt to extinguish my light had only served as the fuel for my bonfire. A year has passed since the day the internet broke. My life is quiet now, but it's a different kind of quiet. It is not the fragile, anxious quiet of my life before. It is the deep, peaceful, and powerful quiet of a life lived on my own terms. I have a new apartment, a beautiful, sun-filled loft in a different part of the city. It is filled with new furniture, new art, new memories. There are no ghosts here. Every single object in this home is something I chose, that I earned. That belongs to me and me alone. It is my sanctuary, built not on a shared history of lies, but on a foundation of my own strength and success. Derek, I learned from a short clinical update from Mrs. Sterling, took a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to a lesser charge, avoiding a long prison sentence, but not a criminal record. He received 5 years probation and a hefty fine. He is professionally ruined. He is a social leper. He is a cautionary tale, a meme, a ghost in the machine of his own making. I feel nothing when I think of him now. Not anger, not pity, just a vast, empty indifference. He is a bug I have scrubbed from my system. My work has become more than just a job. It is now a mission. I have used my new platform and resources to become an advocate for victims of online harassment and digital abuse. I volunteer my time and my company's resources to nonprofits that help people fight back, that help them scrub their stolen images from the dark corners of the internet, that help them reclaim their own narratives. I am taking the worst thing that ever happened to me and using it to make sure it happens to fewer people. I have come to understand the true nature of what Derek did. He didn't just post videos. He tried to steal my story. He tried to define me by my most vulnerable moments, to brand me with a narrative of shame that he controlled. He was a master of gaslighting, of twisting reality to fit his own narrative. His final act was an attempt to do that on a global scale. But he made one fatal mistake. He chose to fight me in my own arena. He chose to use my language, the language of the internet, of code, of networks, as his weapon. And he had no idea that I was more fluent in it than he could ever be. He brought a knife to a gunfight, and I was the one who had designed the gun. My revenge wasn't just about the redirect. It was about taking back the pen. It was about writing a better, stronger ending for myself. His story for me was one of a shamed, broken victim who would disappear into obscurity. My story for myself is one of a woman who survived, who fought back, and who used her own unique skills to build an empire from the ashes of a life he tried to burn down. And so, this is my final message to you, to anyone who is listening, To anyone who has ever felt shamed, or silenced, or had their story stolen from them, your narrative is the most valuable thing you own. It is your truth. Do not ever let anyone else tell it for you. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever been a victim of online harassment or abuse, please know that you are not alone, and it is never your fault. There is help, there is hope, and there is a strength inside you that you may not even know you possess. Hit that subscribe button if you believe in the power of rewriting your own code. And remember, never let anyone else control your homepage. You are the sole administrator of your own life, and you have the power to redirect the narrative at any time.